Jacob made. Oh, I hope you can get what I'm about to say. He didn't go down to the store and buy it. Jacob made his son a coat of many colors. Now I want you to think for just a moment. If you go buy a jacket that has a bunch of colors in it, you know that the fabric that was made to make that jacket or that shirt or whatever piece of clothing that has color in it, it was manufactured in probably a setting where there were certain types of dyes, where the cloth all started the same color. Are you hearing me? And they dipped them in or whatever process it was, there was a professional coloring process. Even in the old days, they would dip them in and dip them and wring them out and dip them in there and have to make colors from flowers and all different kinds of things. And they would color the things that way. But there was no way to make it like what we always see in the pictures of Joseph wearing a coat where they've got perfectly colored stripes. How many times, every time we see, if you go to Google, because I did it because I was trying to find a picture for my graphic, and it don't exist. I looked, I'm talking about for days I looked for a coat of many colors that did not look like strips of colors like this. How many knows what I'm talking about? There was no way it could have looked like that. In the desert, an old man who is a shepherd, who has no experience in cloth dye, is going to perfectly cut symmetrical strips, lay them out, and then take the time to take this flower and make that color and dip it in here and then dry it and then sew it together so that it looked like something that come right out of something that somebody would wear in a modeling show. But yet that's the way we promote that jacket, that coat. I begin to look at this and this remnant is so much on me. I begin to study the remnant and I begin to realize that what a remnant is. A remnant is literally what you see spread out all over this stage. Every single piece of cloth that you see comes from a lady in our church who is known as the #1 seamstress of our church. I called her up and I said, hey, I need you to look in your room that you sew and make stuff for people. Do you keep the pieces that are left over that you cut up from the patterns that you made clothing for your family and friends? Because y'all know what I'm talking about. Maybe your mama was like my mother. She was a seamstress as well, and she'd buy those patterns and she'd pull that pattern out, and it was made of that real leafy paper that could tear so easy, and they'd take one big sheet of cloth, they'd lay it down, lay that pattern on it, she'd just trace that pattern around. Come on, y'all hearing me? And as you begin to cut around that pattern, the part that was underneath that paper that had the straight pins holding it on, once it was all cut off, take the straight pins up, and she could pick it up, and you could almost see the front of the jacket or the front of the pants, or then she'd do it for the back, and then she could sew it together. But when the clothing and when the covering was made for the body, and it was all put together, it looked so good, and you could give it to somebody, and they could put it on, and they could wear it. But in the aftermath, oh, y'all ain't hearing me. In the room where the construction was happening, in the room where the designing was happening, there was this. What are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with this? Let me tell you what happens. The seamstress usually goes around and starts cleaning up all the pieces left over. Are y'all hearing me? Are y'all with me? Cleaning up the pieces that are left over. And usually what happens is they're usually thrown over into a bin somewhere and left. And when somebody is checking their oil out in their car or in the lawnmower, I need some old rags. They don't want to use the good dish rags because mama get them. So they go find them old cut up, leftover, good for nothing Everybody done forgot about, thrown underneath something in the back. Ain't nobody seen in years, but he knows where that bag of rags is. Some of you already know where I'm going. He'd go over and he'd get it. Check his oil. Maybe they need a dish rag. Maybe they need something to clean something nasty down. And it ends up that the remnant pieces get forgotten. They get used. They get abused. They're dirty. They're nasty. And they're good for nothing. They're the rejects. They're used. They're forgotten. They're fragments. Some are black. Some are white. Some are brown. Some are yellow. Some are red. And some of you didn't realize it, are like you. A little bit of all of them. Because some of y'all think you're white, but you ain't white. Some of y'all think you're black, but you ain't black. Black folks need to look at their lineage, you'll find somebody white. White folks need to look at their lineage, you'll find somebody black. Well, it's getting quiet up in this Pentecostal church. I was sitting in a family reunion years ago. Me and my wife just got married. I've been in the ministry for about 3 or 4 years. And they started, this lady, it's way before the internet, way before Ancestry.com. She went to the library and she'd spent an entire year researching my mama's side of the family. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I got some rednecks in my family. Probably got some racists in my family, and you do too. Now I'm sitting there with my family at this big table. She starts reading the history of my mama's family. She goes back to this level, and oh, that's interesting. Goes back. Everybody's in a good mood. Everybody's like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. We knew that we had Cherokee Indian. Everybody's proud of being, descendants of the Cherokee Indian. Everybody's like, yeah, I explain. Great grandmother, she was almost full-blood Cherokee Indian. All this kept going. They went back about somewhere around my great. And she said, and I found in our lineage that everybody in this room, in the Ledlow family, is descendants of one of 3 triplets. And we don't know, and they don't know which one, but they know it was one of these triplets. And they were all slaves and the sons of slaves. 3 triplet boys. They were African American. And we are descendants of one of those 3, is what the record said. We don't know which one. And their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I remember it like it was yesterday. I got so excited. Y'all don't understand. I went, yes. My wife looked at me and said, that explains it. I'm not making this up. Other folks in my family was like, read that again. I'm like, I'll say it. They said we got some folk in us, and we come out of one of them named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And not only am I excited that I can now proudly say, I truly am a white man trapped in a black man's body, or a black man trapped in a white man's body, which I've been told all my life. It's in my DNA. Secondly, who gets to say that they got descendants named, that mama named them? Listen, boys, let me tell you something. We don't know what the future holds, but we do know one thing. No matter what anybody says to us, my boys ain't going to bow to nobody but the true God. You don't name your kids Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego unless you know the Bible. Woo! I'm almost to point 1. Jesus knows wherever peace is. I know what you feel like. You ain't never had a microphone in your hand. You can't sing. You ain't called to do none of that stuff. You just been cut away. Some of y'all didn't finish high school. Some of you never went to college. Some of you have spent your whole life judging you, spent your whole life defined by what others judged you and said about you. And you've allowed the slick-haired, shiny shoes and the big-name preachers and the big-name people in the church to make you feel insignificant and throw you away. But little by little by little by little, I don't rejoice in seeing any man of God fall. Any man of God being exposed for sin. But let me tell you something. One by one, the days of the big church and the big preacher are falling. This remnant revival is not coming. Now, I love TBN, but it ain't coming from TBN. It ain't coming from Daystar TV. They can all be a part of it. But this is a revival of the local church. Are y'all hearing me? This is what he started in Acts chapter 2. Right here. Is this good preaching? So, Joseph had a dream. And in that dream, he saw two dreams. And in those two dreams, in both dreams, all of his brothers that were older than him, that went before him, that technically, religiously, and traditionally had the rights to the house of the Father before him, all bowed their knee to him. You got to get this. Including his own father. So his daddy gives him the coat. His daddy's proud of himself. And then he has a dream and comes in there and says, "Thanks, Dad, but you're going to bow to me as well." How many knows that didn't sit well with Daddy? I guarantee it wouldn't sit well with me. If my kid, one of my daughters came to me, when they was teenagers, said, "Dad, I'm just going to tell you right now, God has shown me that you serve me. And God has told me that I'm going to tell you what to do." I'm going to say, "You better go back and check and see if that was God or not, because I'm about to lay hands on you suddenly." Now watch this. I got to hurry. Now watch this. This is what the church has looked like for a long time. There was a day that it was fully colored. But over time, we started making our own coat. And see, we started thinking that somewhere along the line, God gave us the right to pull off the pieces that we thought didn't fit. And little by little by little, all of the colors, all of the different nationalities, all of the different walks of life. When the church, we used to preach, and we still preach it, but we don't mean it, open to everyone, looked one way. This is all we're left with. Our coat. We're bloodied up from the fight. We got what we wanted. But God said 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, I'm about to strip you of everything that you have built. I'm going to show the world that even though they think it's the devil that's doing it, and it is the devil that's doing it, how many knows God will let the devil play right into his hands?